Welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining the South African Chamber of Commerce and the BEE Chamber. I'm Sharon Constanson. I am Chairman of the South African Chamber of Commerce. We are based in the UK, but we have chapters throughout South Africa. So thank you very much for all of you for joining us. I first of all want to just introduce you to the individuals I have with me on the panel today. Firstly, Arlene Wilson-Max, who is the Stakeholder Relations Executive for the BEE Chamber, where she drives the strategy. There's energy in this lady, my goodness. There's no space to be left behind by Arlene. She's on your heels all the time. But what she does is make sure that companies can actually follow best practice in all aspects of YES4Youth. So it's making sure that we can, as South Africans, as companies, do the best we can for our youth and therefore for our future. The other lady who is with us today is no stranger to the South African Chamber, Leanne Emery-Hunter, who has worked with us before on previous webinars where we've talked on our youth program. I think it was actually almost a year ago, back on the 16th of June last year. Leanne is a business leader who excels in leading innovative, challenging, impact-driven organizations. And today she is and has been for a while now, Chief Operating Officer for the Youth Employment Service, which is known as YES. So she oversees business operations and will be able to answer a lot of questions on the actual practicalities and the day-to-day issues that you as companies have to deal with. So at this point, you didn't come here to listen to me. You came here to listen to our two panelists. And I'd like to start with you, Arlene. I know there's something you would like to share with us that is a video of the Black Empowerment Chamber, please.
Good morning, Sharon. Good morning, delegates. Thank you so much for this opportunity, as always, Sharon. It's always a pleasure to be online with your members. And hello to Leanne. I would like to play a short video on why Black economic empowerment exists in South Africa. And I will come back online after the video.
BEE Chamber. In 2010, the National Development Plan set a goal to increase the employment rate from 13.6 million to 24 million people by 2030. The number of individuals employed needs to increase by 9 million between now and 2030. Then BEE was introduced in 2007 to secure contributions from government and business towards economic growth, enabling inclusion of more South African citizens to address unemployment and alleviate poverty. If the National Development Plan and BEE was designed to grow the GDP and create jobs, then why has unemployment increased after their introduction? Our population has grown from 41 million in 1994 to 60 million people today. In that time, the number of employed South Africans has also grown by 6 million, from 8.9 million to 15 million, representing a growth in employment rate from 20% to 28.5%. However, the unemployment rate has increased over the same period, from 22% to 32.6%, because population growth has outperformed job creation by a factor of 3 times. What this means is that South Africa's population growth has outperformed the country's job creation. The distribution of unemployment remains highly racially skewed, with white unemployment sitting at only 8.8%, which is on par with France and is lower than Italy and Brazil. Whereas the South African Indian unemployment rate is 11.8, colored 25.7, and African 36.5, making African unemployment the 7th highest in the world. The exceptionally high unemployment rates for Indian, colored, and especially African men and women is the reason for Black economic empowerment in South Africa and the reason for the objective of the BEE Act being meaningful participation in the mainstream economy for Black people. Join the BEE Chamber today to understand more about the original intent behind BEE and how you can align your business targets and plans to contribute as a good corporate citizen and to achieve a level of pride from your corporate contributions. As a member, you will access up-to-date information, support, guidance, services, software and training to support your transformation journey.
Thanks very much. I now welcome the two of you to spend the next sort of 25 minutes or so just in conversation, discussing some of the key prevalent issues that we need to unpack for companies so that they are in a position to understand what the opportunities are for YES4Youth. What are the rules? What are the regulations? What can they not do, and what can they do? So maybe, Leanne, start with a short presentation by yourself. Leanne, all yours.
Thanks very much for the opportunity to be here today. It's always wonderful chatting to your members. And just to give you a little bit of background and about YES, I'm going to go into a little bit of background about YES, assuming that I have addressed this forum before, so I'm not going to spend too much time, and then just some of the technical details around YES and how the program works. And then I think from there we'll go into more of a discussion in terms of some of the technicalities. So I think Arlene's video laid out this problem earlier. And I think, the unemployment stats you saw related to the entire population. But if you're looking at youth and the expanded population and the expanded definition, which includes discouraged work seekers, because we really believe that if you are between the ages of 18 and 35, which is the definition of youth in South Africa, you should be actively looking for work. So 2 in 3 South Africans are currently unemployed. This is a headline from Time magazine showing South Africa as the most unequal country in the world. And we still are trying to break the cycle of unemployment in South Africa, where we have between 7 and 10 million unemployed people. And that's really why YES exists, is to try and break the unemployment trap that youth find themselves in South Africa. So I can't get a job without experience, and I can't get experience without a job. And I think many people can really relate to that challenge in your life, that somebody needs to take a chance on you before you are de-risked to other potential employers. But in an economy where 7 million youth are unemployed, breaking that trap is so much more difficult. And we have the added challenges around spatial inequality, around the fact that about 50% of people entering the labor market every year have less than a secondary school leaving certificate. But jobs are being created in the first economy, and highly technical jobs. So we really are an incentive for business, and the Gazette, this level up that you get on your scorecard, was created in partnership with government to give private sector companies an incentive to employ youth and give youth a chance. So basically, we are an enabler of 12-month quality work experiences for unemployed youth. We know, according to Stats SA, that if you have some kind of work experience, you're 7 times more likely to transition into permanent employment. Experience, a smartphone, a CV, and a reference letter, which is all part of the YES program, makes any young person 3 times more employable. And in return for providing these life-changing work opportunities for youth, a business can achieve 1 or 2 levels up on their B-BBEE scorecard. And in addition to that, what we're finding with more and more of our clients is they're also integrating YES into their ESG strategies. So that is environmental, social, and governance, as well as for mining companies, particularly their social and labor plans. As I said, YES was really established out of the CEO initiative in around 2016. A number of CEOs were asked to tackle some wicked problems, youth unemployment being one of the most pressing. If we're sitting on 2 in 3 youth unemployed in South Africa, what does that mean socially, economically, what does that mean for business? So a few CEOs took up the mantle, and that's when the Gazette was published 2 years later. And now essentially YES has been operational for 4 years, and we have 1,400 active corporate clients. And as you can see from this slide, this is just a little snapshot. We have clients that range from all sectors, from finance to manufacturing to ICT to mining. We are really sector agnostic, and we've really enjoyed massive support from the private sector. We have recently celebrated our 100,000 jobs created through the private sector milestone. So that's in just under 4 years. This is 2,900 registered programs. What this means is that 6 billion rand has been injected into the economy back through youth wallets. And we're seeing that at the moment, 40% of our alumni have gone into permanent jobs. And we are obviously working on numerous pathways, such as entrepreneurship, in order to ensure that youth are as employable as possible post the program. YES is essentially a social mobility program. In South Africa, if you are born into the poorest households in South Africa, it will take you 9 generations to be able to break that cycle of poverty and be able to reach the middle class. So we are really trying to get these youth who are excluded from the economy into the economy, get that first work opportunity, de-risk them to future employment, to future employers, or be directly absorbed into the organizations that they work in. 61% of our YES youth come from grant recipient households, so their homes are sustained by grants, social government grants, and 77% of our youth have some form of dependence. So you can see that immediately that salary ripples across communities and families. And it has this multiplier effect. And we're really trying to focus on certain sectors, some flagship programs that make youth as employable as possible post the program, and that really have skills that can take them into future-facing roles. So things like our drone program, we've got a phenomenal barrister program, coding, creative. So they, while we work across a multitude of sectors and youth are operating in numerous roles, there are certain sectors that we're really trying to focus on. Global business services is another one, to try and ensure that our youth post the program are as employable as possible. You can go onto our website. There's a calculator on our For Business page, and you need to put in a number of numbers. So your net profit after tax, average net profit after tax for the last 3 years, your head count, and the calculation is then done, and that provides a number, and that is your YES commitment target. So if your commitment target was, say, 100, that's the number of youth that you have to sponsor 12-month work opportunities for in order to receive 1 level up on your BBEE scorecard. You then just double that number if you want to get 2 levels up, or you do 1.5, and that is 1B level and 3 points. So often clients will go for the middle option when they potentially are just missing a few points on some of the elements on the scorecard, and they need that in order to get the additional level up. You do have to be at a minimum level 8 in order to participate in YES. So YES was created to be additive to the scorecard. In terms of the sub-minimum requirements, depending on the size of your entity, there are sub-minimum requirements. So particularly, I'd probably focus on generic entities. You either have to have a 50% average across the 3 priority elements, which are obviously ownership, skills development, and enterprise and supplier development, or you have to have 40% sub-minimum in 3 of the elements. So even if you do not have ownership, you are able to qualify in YES. You just have to obviously make it up with the other scorecard elements. I'm not going to go into all of the detail here. It is on our website. But if you are unclear, please just do ask us, and we can also help you and go through it with you to make sure that you are able to participate. You can do YES in two ways. So one, you can place youth in your own organization. This is generally the best option for clients. A lot of our retail clients use option one, where they are needing a big pipeline of youth, and you are giving youth a 12-month fixed-term contract, testing for fit, seeing whether these young people would fit into your organization in the long term. And then those that don't obviously get the CV and the reference letter and are de-risked for other future potential employers. The alternative is if you go through our turnkey or implementation partner solution. So this is where, if you can't place in your own organization, you can place youth in one of our host partners, our IP partners. So these are generally jobs that have a social impact. So healthcare, education, or as part of your SMME development strategy. And then you would then pay the salaries for these youth. Our IP partners would do everything for you. And this is often integrated into our clients' ESG strategies. So for example, Nedbank being one of our biggest clients, they place youth in green jobs because that for them is really a major focus, green environmental jobs. So youth are placed in jobs ranging from conservation to installing solar panels and green energy. So as I mentioned, if you place youth inside your own business, then it is your responsibility to recruit, provide the 12-month work experience, and meet the absorption requirements. As I said at the beginning of a few slides back, the absorption requirement for one level is 2.5. If you are going for either 1 + 3 points or 2, then the absorption requirement is 5%. Absorption is permanent, or you have to assist youth to set up their own enterprise. We do have a partnership with YES4Youth.mobi, which is a national platform supported by Presidency, where we ask youth to go and register themselves as job seekers. And so they can then have access to potential opportunities from YES and also other opportunities. And then we encourage our clients and our host partners to recruit from that database. Alternatively, if you go the turnkey model, YES will do everything on your behalf through our implementation partners. So we will recruit, host, manage absorption for the sponsor. And these jobs, as you can see, range from digital to conservation. We now recently have added some call center jobs, because obviously this is a great entry-level job for a youth to be able to quickly enter the workplace and get phenomenal skills. And it's got a very high absorption rate. So really just depending on your strategy, we can then work with you to see where which IPs would be best suited to your strategy. Every youth that enters the program receives a smartphone. And on that smartphone, there's 3 things. One is a survey app where we survey youth to see how their work experience is going. One is learning modules. So we have 25 work readiness modules, as well as 12 entrepreneurship modules. So this is basic work readiness, from basic work etiquette, managing your money, communication skills, etc. And we also have a supervisor app. So every youth needs to have a supervisor. The supervisor is asked to fill out surveys, and then that goes into the youth CV and reference letter. YES alumni have several pathways after the program. Obviously, can be absorbed into the work experience host, or a lot of our youth go on then to be employed in the sector or to pursue further studies. And then obviously the entrepreneurship pathway. And one of the things that we've been working on is with the NYDA, if a youth completes our entrepreneurship modules on the phone, then they are able to apply for a startup grant to assist them in starting their own businesses. So really, YES is a way to have a broad-based impact. You are creating future professionals, future entrepreneurs, and game changers while ensuring that you are adhering to your transformation goals and really being able to integrate into some of your other strategies as well, like your ESG, your SDG strategies. I was asked to go through some of the costing. This is all on our website, but basically there's three costs to YES. One is a registration fee per program, which depending on the size of your business ranges from 100 Rand to 20,000 Rand. Then we have, if you are placing youth in your own organization, depending on whether you are doing YES for BEE or not for BEE, and the size of your business. So depending on your net profit after tax and your revenue, there's a number of models. Most of our clients fall into the 5,000 Rand category. So that is our monitoring and evaluation fee, and that's per youth per year. And that fee really goes towards us being able to monitor and evaluate the work experience of every youth on the program, as well as obviously the phones and the learning material. We have a call center which phones 24,000 youth every month to monitor and evaluate their work experience. At the moment, 92% of our youth say that they're having a good to excellent work experience, which we obviously monitor very carefully. And if any youth come and say that they're not having a good work experience, we will then go back to the host partner. If you are doing the turnkey solution, so this is where YES's host partners do everything for you, then that's 9,700 Rand per youth per year. Then the third cost is the actual salary. So that is dependent on the role that the youth are placed in. So the minimum salary that a youth needs to be paid is minimum wage, which is 4,407 Rand, I think, at the moment. And but we do have youth that are earning 20,000 Rand, 50,000 Rand as first salaries because they're actuaries, and that's kind of market related. So it would really depend on where the youth is being placed and the role itself, but the minimum is minimum wage. We also have YES hubs. So we have a hub in Alexandra and we have a hub in Saldanha. And these hubs are really about bringing investment, technology, training, access to market to underserved communities, and to really try and drive SMME support. We can create sustainable ecosystems in underserviced communities. And you, as a client, if you would like to support the hub, there are three things. You can either get a Section 18A certificate, SED points, or we can also look at ED points. That would be a longer term program that we would need to look at and develop with you. So our hubs, really, we have programs from digital programs to a culinary academy where youth are trained to either start their own culinary businesses or go into the ecosystem. We have textile manufacturing, our drone academy, which we are really proud of, where youth, and that has 100% absorption rate, where youth are trained as drone pilots. The green engine, I'm not going to go through all the programs in detail, but you can, if you want to gain additional SED points, for example, the hubs are a great way to do so. So that's, I think, really all from me. But we've really celebrated this milestone now But obviously with 2 and 3 youth still unemployed, our work is just beginning. So we are grateful for the support, but we continue to push to see how we can unlock more opportunities for youth.
Amazing, Leanne. While we wait for Arlene, I've got a question. You come across such a wide variety of not so much ages, but people from whence they have come. What is the natural skill that is embodied that you see coming to the fore most often?
You know, it really depends on the roles, but I think youth in South Africa generally have an amazing energy and an amazing, I mean, youth call it this sort of hustle. They're like this hustling, about 20% of our youth that are on the program are engaged in side hustles, and they really have this like keenness and eagerness to get involved and this enthusiasm and energy. And I think it's been interesting, we've had some clients in the automotive industry who it's changed their entire pipeline management strategy. They never used to employ youth at scale like this. And they took a chance and they employed youth within their dealerships. And I remember the MD at the time saying, geez, these guys can sell cars like no one's business. And it kind of changed their whole model of how they recruit. So I think, youth have different skills, but the youth in South Africa have this amazing resilience and this energy and enthusiasm, and you just need to give them a chance.
Amazing. No, thank you for that. Arlene, I'm treading on your toes. I'm going to back out. I'll be back shortly.
Okay, just following up on Sharon's question to Leanne, I think it's important for businesses to understand that you need to incorporate the job that the youth are going to be doing into your pipeline. If you're going to be taking them internally, you need to make sure that the job that you create within your organization actually has a job description, and you recruit the youth based on that job description. It's very important. You don't want to take youth that are hairdressers and put them into a financial administration space, because then retention becomes a problem. The youth don't enjoy what they're doing. So you have to recruit just like you would recruit in your HR strategy, in your HR department, using your HR policies. If you are recruiting for internal, if you are recruiting for external, then we need to make sure that the host employer that is hosting the youth does exactly the same thing. We host youth at our skills village, and we have to be very careful that we don't, have a job description and then recruit that, make recruitments that are not in line with their job description. It's very important for retention, and it's very important for the success of your YES program. Your YES youth have to be on the program for at least 8 months for you to be able to qualify for your 1 or 2 levels up. So if you don't recruit properly at the beginning, it impacts and puts your business at risk because then they want to leave before the 8 months period is over. And YES is a wonderful program. It does have, I think with us at the BE Chamber, we run programs on behalf of the BE Chamber members. And we are 99%, sustainable, 99%. Our retention rate is 99% because the YES4Youth program is such a wonderful program for the youth to participate in. And when it comes to absorption, if you recruit correctly, then they feed very nicely into your HR pipeline. So Leanne, I wanted to just ask you to explain, is YES4Youth a sustainable organization? Does it rely on government funding at all?
No, so YES is 100% private sector funded. Our model is based on the pricing that I showed you. So for every youth that comes onto the program, corporates pay us a monitoring and evaluation fee, and that's how we sustain our business. So we are a social enterprise, and for every 100 Rand that goes into the youth pocket. Yes, to run our operations takes less than 5% of that. So we really are focused on trying to keep our costs as low as possible as a non-profit, but we don't receive any government funding. We're fully private sector funded.
Okay. And then in terms of the salaries that the YES youth get paid, these are the YES stipends. How does that work?
So you have to pay a salary. So minimum wage would be the minimum you can pay a youth. There are specific sectors like the retail sector where it's slightly different because of the hours that youth work, but that would be governed by that sector. And really, as I mentioned earlier, it would be dependent on the role. So we do encourage our clients, if you are recruiting youth into your own business, that you base the salary on an entry-level similar work opportunity. But as I say, the minimum is minimum wage. So long as you have minimum wage or above, it is really at the client's discretion as to how they want to remunerate the youth. You just have to obviously follow the basic conditions of the Employment Act as well.
Okay, great. And do you find that paying a higher stipend helps with retention?
Yeah, so we have clients actually who, in certain industries where youth get kind of poached a lot. So like the retail industry, for example, some of our clients have put a little bit of a system in place where youth may start at a certain salary and then post 6 months, there's an additional booster, and then, so they use that as a bit of a retention strategy. So, but again, it really depends on the role in the industry.
And because it's an on-the-job work experience program, are measured entities or large businesses that actually register to be part of YES, are they able to offer an incentive? Like, say, for example, the youth get their stipend, their monthly stipends, but let's say they're in the sales department and they do make sales. Can they earn commission on top of their stipend?
Yes, I think so. There shouldn't be any reason why not. It's really just so long as you follow the basic conditions of employment and that the youth receive at least minimum wage. So we actually, now that you mentioned that, we have actually had a bike program where last mile delivery youth are able to work as last mile delivery with delivery vehicles, and they are able to earn tips as well as part of the salary.
That's great. That's great. That helps with retention, and it also trains the youth up on the becoming adjusting to the fact that if I work hard, I can earn extra money. Yeah, I can earn more money. And that's how it is in the real world. You don't get a stipend in the real world. You get some places you just earn commission. And the more you work, the more phone calls you make, the more you speak to people, the more you generate income. So that incentives is very different from the learnership programs, which are under skills development. With YES4Youth, like I said, it's a wonderful program. The youth really enjoy participating in it. Can you go through the different types of absorption for us? Just take us through, at the end of the program, how does absorption take place? And what is this thing called absorption?
So absorption means a permanent contract. So the youth has to be given a permanent contract post the 12-month work experience. There is also an absorption through Black youth establishing their own entity. I'm going to actually just read this here because it's the exact definition. So the support will be provided by obtaining the company registration documents, procurement contracts, enterprise and supplier development agreement, amongst others, to identify that absorption has been met in the form of the youth establishing their own business.
Okay. So basically what Leanne has said is that absorption can happen in two ways. The first way is through a permanent contract of employment, which is up until the age of retirement. Now, most businesses find it difficult to offer, never mind if you're a youth or not a youth, to offer employees permanent contracts of employment. You find, especially with multinationals, they have the 3-year or 5-year contracts of employment, and those contracts do not count, unfortunately. It has to be a permanent contract up until the age of retirement. The second way of absorption that Leanne has explained is through your enterprise development spend, which means that at the end of the program, a business can identify youth that are participating in their program, identify those that are actually entrepreneurs, and that's the important part. Once you identify that they are entrepreneurs, you then put a strategy in place that allows them to develop a business concept for them to then go and register a business. You then take your 1% of net profit after tax, which allows you to get your ESD points, and you put that 1% of net profit after tax towards the small business or towards the youth. And it has to happen immediately after the YES program ends. It cannot happen a month after or 2 months after. Therefore, your absorption strategy needs to be implemented, possibly right at the very beginning of the program, or even 3 months into the program. You need to start having the conversations on how we're going to absorb the youth. Because remember, if you do not absorb the youth, you do not qualify for your 1 or 2 levels up. To make sure that the either 2.5% of the youth that you need to absorb are actually absorbed. So that discussion with your team, with your board members, with your HR departments, with your finance departments needs to take place. So you can have that strategy in place. And through the BE Chamber, we've actually successfully absorbed through enterprise and supply development. And you're welcome to have a discussion with me offline if you'd like to find out how we did it. I'm very happy to share. Sharon, do we still have some time for us to maybe me just take Leanne through another question or two?
There's one question I'd like to ask quickly, if I may, that directly relates to what you've just covered, and then I'm happy to give back to you. You talked about the permanent contract, and as any employer, I went, what do you mean by permanent rather than fixed term? And can I understand that if you're offering somebody a permanent contract, it is on a 3-month notice if you're incapable, or it's under notice because of redundancy? So there's still the normal termination opportunities that a business still has. They don't have to pay that person until they're 65, even if they're not in business. Can we just clarify that permanent contract aspect? Leanne, maybe you first, and then Arlene.
Sure. Exactly. So the normal basic conditions of Employment Act apply. So you would have a permanent contract, and your normal policies would apply. So if you have a 3-month probation period, if during the time that the youth that the employment has happened, there's a retrenchment or a resignation, it would be a normal employment relationship.
You did have me worried.
Also,
Arlene, thank you.
What's important to note is that the youth can be dismissed, just like according to the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. If there's theft, if you are dismissing for reasons of theft, for reasons of death, for reasons that are not under your control as a business, the Basic Conditions of Employment Act do apply.
And if it's incompetence or lack of engagement of the individual, they don't get on in the team, all those reasons why you would normally make an employment change?
Well, as long as you have absorbed, Leanne, you can correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is as long as you have absorbed, you sign a contract of employment with the youth, and maybe after 3, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, you realize that the youth are just not performing. You have the option to move them into a different department. You have the option to, take them through the disciplinary procedures according to the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. But the reason that absorption happens immediately after the program ends is because we need to understand that the measured entity has absorbed in order for them to claim their points. So what happens 6 months later is another discussion. We don't go into the next year to find out if the youth are still employed by that organization. What is important is that the evidence that is provided is a permanent contract of employment immediately after the program ends. Okay.
Please
Leanne,
go ahead with your other question, Arlene. I'll back out. But actually, Leanne, you wanted to say something?
I actually might want to add something because it might be of use to some of the people on the webinar. Something that we had some concerns about with some of our clients is that they are nervous about losing their absolute star. So, 6 months into the program, you can see that a youth is a complete star, and you don't want to wait till the end of the program to in case they get poached or start looking, because they are obviously worried about long-term sustainability. So you can, during the program, offer the youth a permanent contract. But you have to run the two contracts concurrently. So you have to have your 12-month fixed-term contract, which the youth would then have to complete, and then you can have a permanent contract running concurrently. The only thing is, if you have a permanent contract and then the youth leaves prior to 8 months, you would still have to do the normal replacement and wouldn't be counted as absorption. But there's been certain clients who've been worried about losing their best talent. And so this is what the DTIC has said is fine, so long as there's two concurrent contracts running.
Thanks, Leanne. I'm just leading on from there. Can you just take us through a little bit about, the 8 months? What happens if the youth leave the program before 8 months are complete? What does a measured entity or a company have to then do?
If a youth leaves the program prior to 8 months, it is the responsibility, in the case that you are hosting youth internally, it is the responsibility of the client to replace that youth within 1 month. If it is replaced through one of our vetted implementation partners on the turnkey model that I told you about, then it would be the responsibility of the implementation partner to make sure that that replacement happens and then advise the client. So obviously it has a cost implication.
Does that mean that they're replacing for another full 12-month contract? Or is it just for let's say the youth leave within 6 months? Does the measured entity then get a contract with another youth for 6 months?
Correct.
Or is
no, not for 6 months, another 12-month contract.
All right, so there is a budgetary implication to the youth leaving before 8 months has been completed. Absolutely. And that's why recruitment at the beginning is important and retention is important, at least up until the 8 months. Because then if you have 20 youth and 5 of those youth leave before the end of 8 months, it means that you need to identify another 5 youth and you need to put those 5 youth on another 12-month fixed-term contract. So it's important for us to manage the youth, communicate with the youth, and also if the youth are not happy, you can move them to a different department. You can even take them outside of if you're hosting your youth internally, let's say you're hosting 20 youth internally, and you find that 3 or 4 of them are just not of your company's culture, you can speak to YES4Youth and they can move those youth into an implementation partner, which is called a host employer. So you don't have to dismiss them immediately. If they're not happy, they don't have to leave the program. We can have those discussions with them to say, okay, you're actually not an admin person. You love hairdressing. Let's find you a hairdresser to finish your YES program in.
And maybe if I can add, the DTIC has also now allowed for a 5% buffer. So if you get to 5% of your commitment number, if you are less than 5% of your commitment number, then you don't have to replace those youth. So you can have up to 5% of youth drop out.
So basically, Leanne, what you're saying is that if my YES target as a measured entity is 20 youth, I can actually put 25 youth on the program to have a sort of buffer in case some of the 20 drop off the program. Is that correct?
No, so what I'm saying is that you're allowed to have 5% of the youth drop off the program. That is that is allowed. However, a lot of our clients who know that they have a especially clients who've done YES a few times know that they generally have a certain rate of dropout, would add extra youth onto the program so that they have an additional buffer.
Okay. Thank you for the clarity on that. I just wanted to ask the question as if I am a measured entity.
Thank you for joining us, Tracy. People might be wondering why we've got two Leannes that look different. Tracy, thank you for joining us. Leanne, do you want to just give us or Tracy, as to the focus Tracy would like to just add to the exercise before we, because we don't have a lot of time left. We're going to have to go into final questions, and I have got one to go. So Tracy, is there something you want to share with us?
I'm all good. I'm just echoing what Leanne has said about the 5% buffer. It is actually quite material that if you start with your example, Arlene, which is 20 youth, you are able to have one youth dropping off.
And still be
for the clarity,
compliant.
Tracy.
Pleasure.
Sharon, I think we can hand over to you now and you can ask us questions.
Question I wanted to ask is, South Africa is a massive country, physically. I mean, when I sit here in the UK, it's a big country. And I know I've driven it far and wide. I have driven around the country. What do you find are the typical or the most common regions that people come from? And then correlated to that, where are most of the jobs? And if they're not correlated to a common geography, how are the students finding accommodation and how do they manage their living experience because they're not in the home environment anymore?
So Trace, I'll start, and if there's anything you want to add. So, I mean, our biggest footprint from a job point of view is the three biggest regions in South Africa. So it's Gauteng, Western Cape, and KZN. Some of our clients specifically ask us to place youth through the IP model in specific areas. Maybe they want a national footprint. So YES has got a national footprint, but the three biggest regions in South Africa are the three regions where we have the most jobs. It just kind of happens naturally. In terms of getting to work, I mean, it is obviously a big challenge because we still have massive spatial inequality in South Africa. One of the reasons the implementation partner model was developed is that youth are able to work in their communities, and these jobs have another impact in that if I'm working as a HIV counselor, for example, in my own community, then it assists me from commuting. Obviously, 60% of our youth are young women, and there's often childcare responsibilities as well, so they're able to be closer to home. And then the jobs actually have an impact on their own community. So it's like this triple impact that we see happening.
Absolutely. And just re-echoing what Lee has said, it's really a phenomenal initiative in terms of bringing jobs to communities where required, so that those individuals don't pay their transport costs, they're able to live at home, and they're able to support their families, because that's another very important dynamic in South Africa, where a lot of youth are supporting their families.
One of my questions was around the gender mix, which you referenced a moment ago, Leanne, where you said it's 60% of the youth are young women. That surprises me because technically I would have thought it was 50-50. It is different. Is there a reason behind that?
So, I mean, in South Africa, of our unemployed population, 70% are women. So Black women are the most severely affected by the unemployment crisis for many reasons. And so often our clients specifically ask us to ensure that we include women on the program. And some of our clients even specifically want to have female empowerment programs. So like Pizza Hut, for example, they are doing YES, not for BEE, they're doing it for their sustainable development goals. They have a program, it's called Lead Hership, where they place young women in jobs in communities, so healthcare, education, as content creators, so photographers, videographers, etc. So a lot of our clients, as part of their transformation strategies, have asked us specifically to focus on ensuring that women are included.
Any input from you, Arlene?
I just wanted to, you just spoke about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and that relates to the ESG, which is environment, social, and governance. Do you want to maybe elaborate on how that benefits multinational companies and JSE-listed companies that are participating in the YES4Youth program that need to report on their ESG?
So YES is just such a seamless fit for companies looking to make an impact and to be able to report on their ESG and sustainable development goals, and to include YES in their sustainability reports. So many of our clients are either integrating the BEE benefits and the ESG strategy, or they are just doing YES as part of their ESG strategy or their sustainable development goal strategy, particularly in the host placement model where I was mentioning, where potentially youth may be working in environmental jobs, so assisting with providing green energy, etc. So then they're able to report on not only the social impact of the actual jobs, but the additional impact that the jobs are having. So if youth are working in sectors like healthcare and education, they can report on the impact of those jobs, or in environmental jobs, as well as the actual social impact of the youth and the effect that has on the communities. And we're now working to try and assist our clients on reporting and reporting more broadly on their YES initiative.
When you think about it, it is very broad. It's a bit like the octopus. It's got tentacles going in everywhere. And whether we're talking about sustainability goals, we're talking about ESG, we're talking about diversity, equity, inclusivity, the correct mindsets that our businesses should be having. These things are all so integrated with one another. They're all part of the same dynamic that we need to employ and to run businesses for all the right reasons. We need to do a product that is put together in ethical manners. We've changed the foundation of business so fundamentally over the last 10 years. And everything you guys are doing and the way you are employing people, for me, supports that in such a strong way, because you're not doing what South Africa did very successfully 60 years ago, displace people. We're not displacing people. And that's the part of the reason I asked that one question, where they come from, where they're working. And so many parts in the world, we do travel, we do go long distances, we do work from home and then travel to work. That's not going to happen. But it's interesting that the natural that you're working towards is to find roles that are closer to their communities rather than not. Arlene, we have no seconds left. Do you want to give us a final statement?
Yes, I just wanted to say that it's important to make sure that your recruitment strategy at the very beginning of YES is clear. You understand why the youth are coming on board. Don't make it just about transaction. Make it transformational, so it leads to sustainability. Transaction is where you're just ticking the boxes in order to get your 1 level or 2 levels up. But make it transactional, make it transformational, sorry, so that it is sustainable. Poverty is a real thing. We work in underdeveloped areas every day. I'm going out on the roads every day. We run soup kitchens every day, and you can see the poverty. And eventually, it's going to impact all of us. We saw what happened in Durban, in KZN, with the strikes and the all that burning of the buildings and the soup. All of that is because of poverty, regardless of what we think of the political parties in our country. Poverty is a real thing, and we really need to start investing in sustainable initiatives, and your strategies need to be sustainable. So please, when you recruit, make sure you have good strategies in place.
I think that is a very sound message to business. And it sounds so obvious, but I think your transactional transformational blur risk can be very high in certain organizations. So Arlene, thank you for that clarity. Tracy, Leanne, amazingly informational. I've had text coming in already from other people that are listening, but they're sending me messages outside of the system saying how informed this is and how inspirational this initiative is of YES4Youth, which most of us have heard about, but now many have a much better understanding. So thank you for joining us again, Leanne. It's been really an honor to have you with us. Arlene, number 6 is around the corner. We will be on to our next BEE event. And those of you who are interested, there are recordings of this one coming, will be released the next day. And actually it's Easter, you might have to wait a day or so. And we have got the recordings of all the previous ones, which cover a vast range of subjects. So to my guests, thank you very, very much for joining us. I look forward to further endeavors as to how we as the Chamber can support improving the lives of all South Africans.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you to your members. Bye, Leanne. Bye, Tracy.
Bye.
Bye.